have to let it drop. Let it drop.
What's going on, Detroit Lions fans? Welcome back in Detroit Den 313, your go-to source. This is crunch time for the Detroit Lions. This is where you want to be for all your news, your information, your rumors, your hypotheticals. Just some guys sitting back talking some football. Will, what's on the menu today? What are we going to be chewing on?
Hey, listen, it was bouncing around Twitter earlier. A 10-sack type of guy is now potentially available. The Tennessee Titans being the team, has decided that they're going to go ahead and allow Harold Landry to shop around for a trade. And people are very interested from what I'm seeing on Twitter. So that leads me, Steve. That leads me to first an immediate question for you. And while Steve's answering, go ahead, get those little fingers rumbling. How do you feel about a potential meeting of Ardan Hutchinson and Harold Landry side by side with the Detroit Lions? How you feel about it?
I think Landry would be a great piece. This is someone I was kind of wanting at the trade deadline. Looking at his profile, his information, he'll be 29 by the time the season starts, still under 30. That's phenomenal. Consistency. Here's my thing. No more projects, no more question marks on players. When I'm looking at Harold Landry, what I like to do now is go back and see how many games they've played each season. The last 3 years, he's played in all 17 games. The only time he missed time was back in 2018. I think we were still on a 16-game schedule back then. He missed one game. So is he available? Yes. Is he productive? Yes. 9 sacks this past season, 10.5, 12. Like, this dude's flirting with 10 every single year. Like, I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Detroit Lions. He's what we need. And we talk about it all the time, Will. We're not going to break the bank to give up future assets and multiple draft picks for the Miles Crosby or the Max Crosbys, the Myles Garretts. 3 first-round picks is insane. I think Harold Landry is a little bit more realistic. What do you think?
Listen, when you're talking about a guy who has spent multiple seasons, like you said, let me pull it back up. I had it here. A guy that's had 9 sacks last year, 10.5 the year before, 12 the year before that. You're talking about a guy who's showing production, a guy who can play the game of football from a statistical standpoint. You would believe at a high level. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer. I want nothing to do with this guy.
Are you nuts?
Nothing to do with them. Harold Landry, I want nothing to do. Stay your little raggedy butt in Tennessee and stay yourself away from Detroit. If I catch you moving things into Detroit, I'm going to unpack your things, probably pee on. No, I'm not gonna go that far, but I don't want you here in Detroit, man. It's not any beef, man, or anything like that. But if we run this thing back, Steve, to the Detroit Lions, absolutely just spanking those Tennessee Titans back last season, man. We were looking for a pass rusher because that was when we lost Ardan, man, I believe was right around that time. We lost Ardan Hutchinson, and we were in search of a pass rusher. And I watched that film, and I watched every single play from the Tennessee Titans game, probably 3 or 4 times, right? Combing through, just looking at them, because it started off with Harold Landry, because there was some talk last year about Harold Landry potentially being available. Harold Landry potentially wanting to go to a winner and get out of that dumpster fire that Tennessee Titans had became. And I was interested when that game started. And when that game ended, I was no longer interested. But what I was very interested in, and if you guys watched, you remember me talking about this guy, because I ended up doing a show on him afterwards with Steve. Ardan Key. Ardan Key really impressed me. He took Taylor Decker to school multiple plays in that game, and I didn't even remember that Harold Landry played in the game. So if you go into the statistics, you're going to see that Harold Landry had more sacks than Ardan Key. You're going to see from a statistical standpoint, Ardan Key's stats aren't the same from a sack standpoint as Harold Landry, but if you watch the game film, you see how Ardan Key is probably a little bit more versatile from the linebacker position, being able to do things at linebacker as well and rush. And how he controls the game, how he controls the edge, how he controls the line of scrimmage, how he can drop back, how he can get a rush, how he can finesse, he can go speed, he can go power. He offers a lot of things, and he's a role player, and he's less money. So when I'm looking at a guy like Harold Landry, who is going to be 29 years old by the time football starts for the Detroit Lions. His contract for the next 2 years, 2025 is $17.5 million, followed by in 2026, $17.5 million. I got better things that I can spend my money on than Harold Landry, who's essentially, just to me, maybe a little bit more versatile than Zadarius Smith. Right. So I don't know, man, from a production standpoint, yeah, he got some sacks, but a lot of those sacks were contributed to me to the DC because I'm seeing sacks off of stunt games where he's running through alleys to go get his sacks. He's not manipulating the offensive linemen with technique. He's not just overpowering and just dominating football games. He's getting scheme-based wins. He's getting overall, because who was the D-line coach out there for a portion of that time? Mr. Terrell Williams, the one of the best D-line coaches in the NFL, if not number one, over that time, dreaming and scheming up things up front. He was a person who got a reward. I lack of a better word, I can't think of what I really wanted to say, but he was rewarded by having a hell of a D-line coach who schemed up some great things. But I don't think he's a dude like that. For me, it would be a pass. When we're talking about that $17 million over the next 2 seasons, I'd rather give Aiden Hutchinson an extra $17 million than spend that money on Harold Landry. Sorry. I know that's probably not popular. I've seen it buzzing around Twitter, how excited people are about potentially getting a guy like Harold Landry, but not so fast for Will.
I'm not going to ask if you're nuts, Will. I'm going to ask if you're insane. Are you absolutely certified insane? Do you have a tree in your backyard that just pass rushers just grow on and you could just go pluck one? Because if we're judging a guy off one game, I guess we should cut Jared Goff, who had a shitty game against Houston and a shitty game against the Washington Commanders, because I look at the totality of the season. 17 games played, almost 10 sacks. That's exactly what we need. Durability and production. 17 million. The salary cap just went up 25 some million. So I look at this as a free chance to get a player. And if Brad Holmes makes the trade for a 3rd or 4th round pick, which is what I would assume we'd give up, not a 1st or a 2nd, like you would for a Crosby or a Garrett, you give up that free Aaron Glenn pick, you bring him into town. Maybe you rework his deal, because the only thing I don't like is the 17 million. I'd like that to be around 13 to 14, maybe 15. I'd be okay. 17 is a little steep, but with the salary cap going up as much as it did, hey, it's a free player for me, and we can still go out and re-sign Aiden Hutchinson. And Brad Holmes said in the press conference the other day, we're going to have to make some tough decisions on some players. So if I can give up a 3rd or a 4th for Harold Landry, get a guy who's going to play 17 games, get a guy who at the end of the season is going to be flirting with 10 to 12 sacks, get a guy who doesn't have to be the number 1 pass rusher like he was in Tennessee, even with Justin Simmons, who was kind of banged up lately, or Jeffrey Simmons, sorry. I think he'd be a perfect fit here, where his role is still important, but he's still not the main guy. That's going to be Aiden Hutchinson. So like I said, waves of pass rushers. We got Hutchinson. We're getting a Lee McNeil. You give up that free Aaron Glenn draft pick and you go out there and you get Harold Landry for essentially free. And then in the draft, you still got a 1st round pick and a 2nd round pick to get another edge or another defensive interior lineman. Sign me up all day, Will. I'll help Harold Landry move in. We'll even stop at your house for a burger while me and Harold Landry are moving into the downriver / Detroit area. We'll take Will out for a nice burger, or maybe we hit up some downriver restaurants. I don't know. I think maybe that doesn't change your mind. I don't know what will.
It definitely won't change my mind. And here's the bottom line for me. Number one, I'll say this. Never, ever, ever would I make a decision based on one game. That was what led me in. The Detroit Lions game was what led me into Harold Landry and really digging into the situation, because I heard he could potentially be available. But I dug into multiple games after that, and I just saw more of the same. Is he a role player who they thought was going to be a little bit better, and that's why he got that contract? That's what I see. I don't see a guy that's worth $17 million at all, especially when Josh Sweat last year made $10 million. He made $10 million. I don't know if you remember what he did in the Super Bowl, but I'd much rather would have had Josh Sweat on my team than paying a guy like Harold Landry, who's now demanding trades and on the decline of his career. He's not a guy who is an impact player for me. He's not dominating football games. I couldn't find a situation where he was just taking over a football game the way that I watched Josh Sweat take over a football game for $7.5 million less dollars right? It's just better things that I can do with that money than to pay a guy like Harold Landry. And if we're talking about a draft pick, this is a draft that I've mentioned, I believe, that is going to be a deep, deep draft. Brad said it yesterday. Deep, deep draft. You're telling me that I can mess around and trade away a pick like a Landon Jackson, or the list goes on. It's so many edge rush, Josiah Stewart. There's so many guys that could potentially end up on this team and end up on this team for 4 seasons on rookie deals, rather than paying some dude who's on that tail end of his career $17 million. Listen, if you show up here with Harold Landry and he's getting a burger, it better be because he joined the Detroit Lions coaching staff, not because we just
Are
paid
you
him
nuts?
Are
you
not because we paid him $17 million to play football. I'd much rather go pay somebody $1 million to play football over the next few seasons, right? The next 4 seasons, and then start talking about a contract after that than to pay Harold Landry a crazy amount of money, man. Give me Josiah Stewart, give me Landon Jackson, give me Donovan, what's his name? How you say it? Izaraku. Give me any of these guys, man. Princely, Uman Yellen, any of these guys, man. Before I'm looking at Harold Landry. No, thank you.
You could have both those guys with Harold Landry. I'm not giving up a 2nd-round pick, but the difference between him and Josh Sweat is Josh Sweat wasn't the feature guy in Philadelphia. That's Jalen Carter. I don't need him
to be the feature guy here.
Exactly. That's what I need him to be, is just a really solid compliment to Aiden Hutchinson. We all know Aiden Hutchinson is that dude. We all know he's the one who's the game wrecker. Go ahead and focus on him and let me bring Harold Landry from the other side. Yeah, the $17 million is the only thing I'm a little uncomfortable with. But even if that's the deal, a 3rd-round pick for a $17 million 10-sack pass rusher, those don't grow on trees. And I love all these prospects. There's a lot of names I love. I'm with you on a lot of them. They're still unproven in the NFL. We still don't know. No draft pick is a guarantee. That's all I'm going to say. We don't know how their game's going to translate. Anyone's. Like we could be in love with Mason Graham. He might be a bust. I don't know. I doubt it. I wouldn't bet on it. I think he's going to be a solid player. But my point is, when you're coming from the college game to the NFL game, guys don't always pan out. All right, it's just a known fact. So I'm interested in some guys that we've talked about quite a bit. I'm seeing some more stuff where some of these players are having some interviews with the Detroit Lions this week. That's kind of piqued my interest, but they're still unproven rookies. They're still unproven college players. A 3rd-round pick for a guy with 9 sacks, where he can come in here and be maybe the 2nd, maybe the 3rd option behind Aiden Hutchinson. And then I still have 2 more draft picks where I can go get either one of those guys you just said. I'd love our defensive. If I'm looking at a Mike Green being my third best pass rusher on the team, or a Princely or a Landon Jackson, if those guys can come in as rookies and be the 3rd best pass rusher, might be looking at a defensive player of the year with all the one-on-ones they're going to be getting. Go out there and win your matchups. I think that's what Harold Landry would bring. I can't believe you're not even interested, even in the slightest, because of one game against the Detroit Lions where they're getting absolutely pimp smacked. It'd be hard for me to go out there and be motivated too if my team's down 48 points at the end of the first half.
Ardan Key was very motivated and very productive. And again, it's not one football game. I watched a lot of games, and Harold Landry, to me, from what I saw on film, he was either injured or he's on the decline of his career. I want nothing to do with either one of them. 29 years old, $17 million over the next 2 seasons.
It's the same. Harold Landry and Ardan Key are the same age.
Ardan Key is a better football player from what I saw on film.
He's better at collecting jerseys, because I'd be looking at the Detroit Lions being the 5th team he's played for in his short career.
I'm just telling you what I saw on the football field from the film. I loved what I saw out of Ardan Key. I don't know if you remember the show that we did on Ardan Key. I just think that he is a phenomenal football player. He looks like he's still playing great football, and maybe even potentially ascending on his game. So it's different strokes for different folks. I get that you're in on Harold Landry. Maybe I'm dead wrong, but from what I'm seeing on film, I love Ardan Key. I love his game. He's not available. That's why we're not talking about him. But if we're talking about going to get somebody for $17 million, I just got to pass on Harold Landry. I just think that there's better things that we can do with 17 mil. Brad Holmes talked about it yesterday when he was asked the question, would he go out and make a splashy move? He said, I don't know what splashy is necessarily is. What's the exact number on that? And he even tossed out there, I don't know. Is it 15, 16, 17, or is it just the 20 to $30 million guys? But 15, 16, 17 million isn't nothing to bat an eye out. That's not chump change. And you don't spend non-chump change to go get chumps. So, hey, listen, it's a pass for me, man. Like I said, I'd rather get developmental guys in the draft. I'd rather go get guys like Josh Sweat. If you're telling me if Josh Sweat just got $10 million last season from the Philadelphia Eagles, you're telling me if you offer Josh Sweat $17 million over the next 2 seasons, why am I even going to trade anything for? I would just go offer Josh Sweat if I wanted Harold Landry, somebody like that. Why wouldn't I just go say, hey, I'll give you an extra 14 million off of what you got last season over the next 2. I'll give you 17 million, Josh Sweat, over the next 2 seasons. Come play with the Detroit Lions, and we'll do it like that. And I won't trade anything rather than trading something to go and get Harold Landry. Just doesn't make sense to me, man. No, thank you, Harold Landry. Like I said, unless you are coming to teach some of those things that you learned from Coach Williams out here in Detroit, please stay the heck away from Detroit. Please stay off 75 unless you're coming to get that ass beat again. No, thank you.
I just don't know, William. 1, I don't think that Josh Sweat's even going to get out of Philadelphia. 2, if he does, 17 million ain't going to even get him in the room to start talking. It's going to be north of 20. So 20 million over the next 3 years, or I have Harold Landry at 17 for the next 2 years. I think the business side for that as well goes Harold Landry. I'll take that all day because the production's going to be about the same. So a different position. We can get into X's and O's and who can do what better. I need a guy to get after the passer. All right. If we're giving up 7 extra yards per rush in each game, I think I can live with that. I'm tired of watching these mobile quarterbacks go out here and absolutely shred us with some things. So I think both players, Sweat and Landry, would be phenomenal. But if Sweat's not available and Harold Landry is, it came out today that he's seeking a trade. 1, I don't even know if Brad Holmes is interested as well. So he might be thinking, Josh Sweat, that's probably 23 million. That's out of my ballpark. I'll go give up a third and pay Harold Landry 17. That might be a better value and a better bargain because you ain't getting Josh Sweat in Detroit for less than 20.
I don't know if that's true, man. Like I said, he signed last year for 10 million. So who knows?
Yeah, he was kind of on a prove it deal as well. Like there were some guys they were trying to get out of town, like Hassan Reddick, who didn't work out. So they're paying a lot of guys. So if he walks, he's going to say, I got my Super Bowl ring. I got my production. I should have been Super Bowl MVP. 20 million to get the conversation started.
Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Hey, 17 million isn't that far from 20 million, and I didn't have to trade anything. I didn't have to lose anything.
So your heart's going to break if Josh Sweat stays in Philly for around the same money or maybe around 15?
Will my heart break if I'll tell you this? My heart will break if this happens. My heart will break if we paid more for Harold Landry than we would have than Philly pays for Josh Sweat, and then we also trade a player or draft equity to the Tennessee Titans. So if we end up trading a draft pick or a piece from the Detroit Lions and paying Harold Landry 17 million over the next 2 seasons, and Josh Sweat goes and signs with Philadelphia for 14 or 15 million a season, yeah, my heart will break. I will be like, man, that was a poor decision because now we've had a combined value of way more to get less, in my opinion, because I haven't seen again Harold Landry just dominating football games. Like Patrick Mahomes checks under his bed to make sure Josh Sweat isn't there. Like, what are we talking
about? Milton Williams? What about Jalen Carter? What about Nolan Smith? Absolutely. That's the difference. Is Harold Landry doesn't have a complement of guys. He's Harold Landry, and he has Ardan Key, who's bounced around the league like a ping pong ball.
Are you nuts?
I'm not nuts. You just listed off all the people from the Philadelphia Eagles that are helping Josh Sweat be productive.
Who's in that interior for the Tennessee Titans?
Jeffrey Simmons, end of list.
What are we talking
He's always hurt. He misses time several times a year.
No.
Facts.
Jeffrey Simmons is a dog, man. I'm not saying that he don't miss time, man, but he's played a lot of football along with Harold Landry, along with Ardan Key, along with having Coach Williams. No, man. No.
I don't know. Difference of opinion. I'm curious to see what people say in the comments. Team Steve versus Team Will. Leave it in the comments. Stick around. We'll be back later with another show.
Peace.